And a second thing off the top is this, speaking of comic book films, kind of venturing outside of the mainstream of DC and Marvel comics, we've had this Vin Diesel movie on the way, Bloodshot. Now, the trailer dropped not so long ago. A lot of us were really excited about the trailer. I thought this trailer was pretty solid. I mean, not the greatest trailer ever, but I thought it was a pretty damn solid trailer. One thing we had not heard, though, was what was the rating on this movie going to be? And from the looks of the trailer, some people thought there were, let's say that maybe for sure they would do an R rating, and things like that, particularly with some of the stuff that we saw in that trailer. Well, turns out, no, Bloodshot is indeed going to be a PG-13. And I'll tell you what, just by looking at this image here where Vin Diesel's getting his face blown off, this kind of reemphasizes something I've been saying for a long time, which is you can get away with a lot in a PG-13 movie. Because there were a number of people who thought just by looking, I saw conversations saying, well, look, from this trailer, obviously this movie's going to be rated R just from the stuff that's in the trailer. And clearly not. They have officially said it's going to be PG-13 for intense sequences of violence. And intense sequences of violence is things you can get away with today. So I'm really not surprised that this is going to be PG-13. You want to go after that sweet box office money. But again, I'm also not surprised because I believe there is a lot. Look, the needle has been moving. And the bar has been moving in the whole area of what can you get away with in a PG-13 film. So I'm really not surprised by this at all. And I think it's probably the right move. Now, whether the movie's any good or not, we'll have to wait and see. Chris, when you saw the trailer for, Bloodshot, are you surprised at all that this thing ended up getting a PG-13?
A little yes, a little no. I'm really excited for this movie because Bloodshot's a crazy character, with all the nanites in his blood that give him this kind of healing factor. We kind of get this Weapon X meets Hardcore Henry vibe from the trailer, which I'm really pumped for. Right? I think that works. But I think you're right, though. You can do so much within a PG-13 rating. Do I kind of want to see something really over the top, everyone's heads blowing up every 5 seconds when it comes to Bloodshot? Kinda. But I think you can still do a lot here, and I think you can really focus on the storytelling of it. A lot of people don't know about this character, so I think you do have to have a few parameters to kind of ensure that your action movie does well at the box office. And doing a R rating can limit it for somebody that we don't know as much about. We all know Deadpool now. Now let's get to know Bloodshot, and maybe the next movie can be a rated R.
Chris, when you look at Bloodshot, though, you've got a little bit of a background on the comic. Would you have thought prior to the trailer that this would have been a property that you could do PG-13 as opposed to R, or would you thought it would have had to have been R?
I would have thought it had to be R, honestly. I really would have thought so. And I mean, again, you can do a lot in there, but I think for someone that, especially when you think of a character with a healing factor and some of those things we saw in the trailer, the face coming back together, your initial thought when you see those on a splash page or when you just kind of visualize them yourself is, oh yeah, this is going to be brutal and bloody. This definitely has to be R. But like you were saying, we've really stretched what we can do in PG-13. So I think we can do this in a way that's not going to deter from the actual source material.
Aaron, how do you see this?
Well, I have to say, I'm actually quite disappointed about this rating because it means that once again, we will not get to see Vin Diesel's butt crack. Because, you put a butt crack in there and all of a sudden it's rated R. You can blow as many people's faces off as you want to, but you show that butt crack or a little nip slip and you're definitely going to be rated R. Definitely. Having worked with Vin Diesel before, and John, you have had that infamous conversation, of course, where he was praising your work, which I still am super geeked out about. He's a smart guy. Vin is he's not just the actor that shows up on set. He is the executive producer of pretty much every project that he's involved in. He definitely has his fingers, and being a huge comic book and video game nerd himself, he was probably so intimately familiar with the source material that he was the one who pushed this to actually, he's probably the reason it got made. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But on top of that, he's going to know his audience the best. And he understands exactly what Chris was saying, which is, hey, a lot of people are not familiar with this. I love this. Chris Carr loves this. But let's introduce this character in a way that we're going to really not only get a fan base for the comic book, but also let's think about the fact that Vin Diesel he's not 30 years old. He's looking at that next generation of fans, the people who are not fans of the Fast and the Furious yet, who think about that as like their dad's, movie franchise. Vin's like, hey man, I want to capitalize on these younger viewers so that they can grow up being Vin Diesel fans as well, and he can prolong his own career. He's very, very smart that way. Brilliant business person, and I'm very excited for this.
So the question here, guys, is what do you make of the fact that Bloodshot is going to end up being a PG-13? Do you agree with us? Honestly, I think PG-13 is perfectly fine for it when you understand how much violence you can get away with in a movie like this. You just can't do a lot of sex stuff, whatever. Or are you like, you know what? I think if they had that R rating, they could have actually pushed the limits a little bit more. How are you feeling about it? Jump down to the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. All right.